So talk to me. So you mentioned that you've been writing the book for a couple of years. How long did it take? What was the process like? And where did this idea come from where you're just like, okay, I'm going to write a book about Alphonso?
Yeah. I mean, how much time do you have?
Oh, we got all day, Farhan.
Yeah, it really has been years in the making. So like, just a bit of background about me. Like my background's in sports journalism and sports writing in particular, and been working in this space for close to a decade. And yeah, I joined the Whitecaps in 2013, and at that point I was their club reporter and editor, so doing a lot of writing. And of course, Alphonso joined the club a few years later. So just like all our athletes, I got to know him a little bit, interviewed him a number of times, and actually probably the highlight of my time at the Whitecaps was in 2017 when we kind of got word that Alphonso was nearing his eligibility for his Canadian citizenship. And we wanted to do something special to kind of celebrate that. So we pitched this idea of like a mini documentary, and fortunately the Whitecaps were on board. Alphonso and his family were on board. So yeah, I went to Edmonton with my videographer, Zach, and we kind of documented his life and, sat down with his parents at their apartment in the Clareview area, met some of his, youth coaches, spoke to his now agent, Nick, just outside the Clareview Rec Center, went to the St. Nicholas Soccer Academy, things like that, and really got a sense for, one, what an incredible, human being and, family they are, and two, just, what an incredible story they have and the upbringing and whatnot, and obviously learned a lot there, and kind of helped share the story with the world at that point. And ever since then, I was kind of hooked, and obviously, like a lot of people, I was inspired by the story. Followed it very closely, even because of my own like personal background. Like I'm a second generation Canadian. My parents also immigrated. They were from East Africa, and Canada opened its doors for my parents. So like that kind of shaped me and the stories that I, am drawn to. So that was part of it too. And then the following year, the transfer to Bayern Munich was announced. And that's when I first started kind of thinking about this book and, putting some thoughts on paper, doing some research. I didn't really know what the process would even look like. I remember that Christmas, I actually started working on a sample chapter. But I kind of sat on all that for a couple of years and didn't really tell many people.
Wow.
Yeah, it was still premature. Like Alphonso hadn't even left for Germany yet. I was still busy with work. So it was always kind of in the back of my mind. And then, of course, the pandemic hit in 2020. And I was still at the Whitecaps, but I was kind of just like looking for something to get my kind of creative juices flowing again. And I kept coming back to this idea. So yeah, I dusted off my proposal and sample chapter, and actually, the day Bayern won the Champions League on August 23rd, 2020 is when I first started kind of sending this out to publishers and whatnot. And that was like a 6-month process in itself, and kind of finally came to an agreement with ECW Press in Toronto. And then, yeah, in March 2021 is when kind of the writing process started. At that point, I quit my job just to put my best foot forward and really focus on this for a period of time. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing the last, couple of years. Sorry for the ramble.
Oh, I have a million questions. Please never apologize. My curiosity is just so sparked right now. So you had this sample that you wrote, and you just kind of left it there for a little bit. What was that like? Because I think it takes a lot of courage to put pen to paper or your fingers to a keyboard and start having this dream kind of manifest in a sense. And obviously, it's about Alphonso Davies again. You're writing about someone else's story and journey. What was it like leaving it and kind of going back to your day-to-day, probably at the Whitecaps, I'm assuming, and knowing that this is something you want to do and probably hoping that it's going to transpire in some way, and then eventually getting back to it?
Yeah, it was an interesting kind of feeling because, I mean, it's not something I thought about like every single day, but then I would always kind of come back to it because, Alphonso was just doing, big things, right? Like, he was just kind of beginning his Bayern journey at that point. So every time I kind of saw him in the news, I kind of thought about this again. I'm like, oh, like I really want to do this. Like I think I can do it well. But I think there was also a little bit of just like, typically when these big kind of biographies come out, like they're written by like the big names in the soccer world or in the writing world, and I wasn't that. So like I knew I could do it well, but I also like didn't want to be laughed out of any room and whatnot when I was when I'm pitching it and whatnot. So I think those are all kind of the things I was, feeling at that point. But then, yeah, I think the pandemic just forced people just to reevaluate their lives and their careers and like, okay, what's like really important to you? And at that point, I kind of moved into like more of like a manager position at the Whitecaps. So I wasn't doing kind of the things I love in terms of writing and storytelling. And so, yeah, I kept coming back to this idea. And then at one point, I'm just like, you know what? I won't be able to kind of live, with myself if I don't at least kind of give this a shot. So I gave it a shot, and yeah, here we are today.
I love to hear that. I think that's super inspiring. What was it like pitching? Did you have to pitch this book to Alphonso and his team, or talk to them on the phone? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, kept them in the loop, and, as a courtesy, wanted them to be, aware of this before anything ever came, public. And I told them, like, I have a good relationship with his representatives from the time with the documentary and stuff. I've kept in touch with them a little bit through the years. So definitely spoke to them before this ever came to life, and told them I'd be open to kind of any involvement they were comfortable with. Obviously Alphonso is still very young, and typically when like a player releases kind of their own book, it's later on in their career. So I wasn't expecting like kind of a formal partnership, and they didn't want that either. But at the same time, they've been accommodating with their time and setting up interviews and things like that, and providing photos. So yeah, I definitely had many conversations with them, and super grateful for their support. And then in terms of pitching the publisher, I was like, a lot of big publishers don't even accept unsolicited submissions unless you have like an agent or something like that, which I didn't. So I found a couple that did, and they kind of outlined their guidelines in terms of what they're looking for. And again, it's that sample chapter, it's a chapter outline, things like that. So, followed those guidelines pretty closely. And fortunately, like I said, ECW Press came on board.